Well, we might get everyone to start taking their seats. Welcome, councillors and members of the gallery. I declare the meeting open at 6 p.m. for Tuesday, the 30th of June, 2026. Can I ask you all please to be upstanding for the council prayer? Lord, we humbly beseech thee to vouchsafe thy blessing on this council, direct and prosper its deliberations for the advancement of this area and the true welfare of its people. Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. I'd also like to acknowledge the Wongal people as the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders both past and present. Welcome to our councillors, members of the staff. We've also got four new members of staff here with us. Adrian and Bella from our media team. So welcome. Kaya's from governance and Nazir from junior planning, right? Okay, welcome. I would also like to remind councillors of their oath of affirmation of office under section 223A of the Local Government Act and your obligations under the council's code of conduct to disclose and appropriately manage conflicts. I note that we're still live streaming, so while the code has changed again, I'd like to mention that meetings of council are live streamed for the purpose of promoting public transparency. So that's why we're continuing with the live stream, and that they can be viewed on YouTube or via the council website. I note there are no apologies or for leave of absence, and there's no attendance by audio visual link. Everyone's here present. Do I have any declarations of interest? I'll just declare a pecuniary interest in the notice of motion by Councillor Manor, which is item NM2/26, reducing barriers to heritage conservation. And the reason or the nature of my interest is that I own and reside in a heritage property, which is my private residence. And I also have an investment property, which is in a conservation area. So I think that might be affected, but primarily my own home. And I will remove myself from that item. Councillor Holt?
Yes, I should also declare a conflict there, Mr. Mayor, as I also reside in a heritage property. There is a potential, non-significant conflict, I think, but following the Mayor's lead there, I will also recuse myself from that particular motion for the same reason.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other declarations? I know no further declarations. Just a reminder also for councillors that if during the process of the meeting you realise, because some of you are new, realise that you then do, if we're in an item and you then do, or you might have a conflict, you can still declare it at that time and remove yourself. It's best practice to do it up front, but it doesn't necessarily mean if you haven't declared it up front, you could sit through an item if you've then realised you've got an interest. Okay. Declarations of political donations. I note there's no declarations. Confirmation of minutes for the 19th of May 2026 meeting. Been moved by Councillor Manor, seconded by Councillor Hull. Put the motion. All those in favour, those against, declare that carried unanimously. Councillors Merrill minutes. First item is MM926, which talks about Burwood's achieving an international purple flag accreditation. I won't read the whole minute, or would you like me to? I assume you've all read it. So it's a really good news story. I'd like to congratulate the staff, Miriam and the team, and the general manager for working, and all the directors actually, because I know it was a team effort through combined planning, capital works, community life. I think IT had a role with some of the connectivity, and obviously led by the GM in relation to the development and implementation of Burwood After Dark. So it, with the introduction of License to Play, which I think there's an item on from memory tonight, which talks about that, which is about reducing the barriers and enabling activation of public spaces, investment in events and cultural programming and public domain improvements, strong collaboration with businesses, government agencies and community stakeholders, and also the ongoing work to establish a special entertainment precinct, which we're in a trial period at the moment, and continued efforts to ensure that the nighttime economy remains safe, accessible and welcoming. So the accreditation with Purple Flag recognises that, and it very much recognises and is built around the baseline of the approval for that is built on efforts by council to ensure that the nighttime economy remains safe, accessible and welcoming. So when we had audits with the teams, it was very much built around the areas, the spaces, the lighting, especially for young women to feel safe in and around and interacting. One of the highlights that came out from, I guess, the audit in Burwood was that because we had that increased traffic flow, and I think now we're getting about 140,000 visitors a week to Burwood Chinatown, and about 1.2 million from memory at Burwood Station, a railway station. One of the things that came out from the audit was not only is that showing that we've got a community that's very vibrant, it's quite accessible through public transport options, and good governance built around that. It also found that because there was that activity, that vibrancy and that population sort of coming through, it lended itself to creating a safer environment. That's why we're getting more and more people wanting to visit, because obviously people that are up to no good generally won't come where it's busy. They'll sort of go to areas where it's quieter. So because we've got a bustling town centre, and especially at night, that's contributing to making our area safer as well. So well done to the staff. Purple Flag accreditation is not easily achieved. So it's international. So now we go on a and I believe it continues. So to keep up your accreditation, you don't just get it and then everything dies. To keep up with the accreditation, you've got to consistently have audits that you put through the team. I don't know from memory. I can't remember how many cities in Australia have it, but it's not many. 4. So we're one of 4 cities in Australia that are on there. And one of the great things about Purple Flag accreditation is not only does it recognise the vibrancy and the diversity of the town centre and that it's a safe space for people to come and visit, it also flags you as a tourist destination for tourists coming from overseas. So tourists can look at Purple Flag accredited cities when they're travelling. So in Sydney now, Burwood will pop up. So visitors that are coming from overseas know that it's a safe, diverse, vibrant city to actually come and visit, and hopefully would allow us to encourage more tourists to allow, obviously, them to come and enjoy, visit and enjoy their stay here in Burwood, and see that Sydney isn't just about Sydney City. It's about really culturally diverse communities like we have here in Burwood. One of the things from that also, I'll just finish on, is when we recently had our Burwood Lunar New Year celebration in February, in the 5 hours that the event was held, it went a bit over 5 hours, but through AI cameras that were installed along the street through some of the trailers that they had, so you saw with cameras, it picked up, we had 50,000 visitors come through in that time span, and we had close to $4 million in card spend that went back into the local economy. And that card spend went all the way through into our retailers, our food vendors, our food shops, our entertainment quarters in there, whether it was, some of the areas in Emerald Square and so forth. So it's actually feeding back into our local economy. And that's what's contributing to Burwood having a $3.4 billion, it's contributing $3.4 billion to the state's gross regional product per annum. Now, with the biggest industries being not retail, but that is now bustling and happening. I think it's third or fourth from memory. We have health services, and then education, and then I think then it's retail from memory. So because we're getting a bustling, vibrant city too, it's now showing more and more investment in the health industry, where we've just had a major upgrade to Strathfield Private Hospital, where they've had a major upgrade. They've come and met with us too. They're really interested in maybe doing some more. Strathfield Private Hospital, which is in the Burwood LGA area, is the leading cardiologist specialist base there in the state. We're also got the opportunity now, I believe, which we're hoping would be announced soon, another private hospital service provider, which will come in Victoria Street, and the development that's happening there, which is about 12,000 or 14,000 square metres, which from what we're being told early on is going to have day surgery facilities, emergency facilities, birthing facilities for mums that want to give birth and so forth, and transport of aftercare. So if you're in hospital, you've had a procedure, then you get transported there. You can have a bed there for aftercare, as well as increased specialist services that are coming. Recently, we had Ram Capital invest in a 6,000 square metre commercial building, which they've bought, and now they've added another MRI scanning machine, and I think they're like $3 million a pop. So all this is adding towards the vibrancy and the diversity of the community, and obviously that's leading to more and more investment. And it's also allowing, now that we've got a purple flag, it's allowing us, which we've always done, to continue to work closely with our local businesses, to continue that, as well as our local police and our Burwood Chamber of Commerce, as well as Liquor and Gaming New South Wales and the Office of the 24-Hour Economy Commissioner. So well done to the staff and to the community for your work in relation to that, and also to the councillors for your leadership on supporting these initiatives. Any questions? Any speakers? I'll put them in at all those in favour. Those against, declare that carried unanimously. The next item, councillors, is MM/1026, which is the mayoral minute in recognition of Sarah Nelson through the Paisley Road Beautification Project. As many of you would be aware, council's got a nearly $4 million upgrade of Paisley Road coming. I believe the plans haven't been finalised, but we're in the final stages. I believe it will be, the final plan will come to council for endorsement, or no, or is it part of West Invest? So it was approved as part of the West Invest funding. Those works, I believe, would go out to tender and possibly looking at starting towards the end of the year. From memory, in my briefing, I was just getting so many briefings these days.
Consultation in the next couple of months.
Yeah. So in the next couple of months, we'll be undertaking consultation. As I mentioned, it's close to a $4 million project. Council has in the past investigated options in relation to Sarah Nelson, who is one of the who came to Australia in 1791. So in the minute, it actually speaks about Sarah's history. Who was a wife, mother and farmer. She came to Australia as a free woman after her husband was sentenced to 7 years servitude at Botany Bay. She was one of only 6 convict wives who arrived in Australia that year, and as a convict wife, Sarah was a minority. She received a land grant of 15 acres in 1794, and Sarah established Nelson Farm, located in present-day Croydon, in and around that Strand area. So her story represents an important chapter in our community's history. So part of that was council was always looking at investigating a way where we could commemorate. Recently, as I think it was a couple of years ago, we did some bus stop seating sort of acknowledgements of certain characters in Burwood that sort of came through and who they were, and talking a bit about Burwood's history. Part of that was the Tui's brothers, who came up with, were named after Tui's beer, who were locals. But in saying that, it might be a really good idea, considering that council is looking at doing a Paisley Road corridor upgrade, which will include a footpath or walkway along the northern part of Paisley Road, along the rail line there, which is currently just all shrub and grass at the moment, that it might be a really good idea if we can build some type of heritage walk in there that talks a bit about the story of Sarah Nelson and her journey as one of the early land grants that was given to, and I believe it was the first to a woman here in Croydon. So it's about recognising that. So the minute is that the General Manager investigate opportunities to recognise Sarah Nelson as part of the Paisley Road beautification project, undertaking community consultation to inform the preferred approach and report back to Council with recommendations. Any questions? Put them in at all. Those in favour, those against, declare that carried unanimously. And okay, I've got one more. Almost forgot about this one, which is in relation to unlocking school infrastructure to support growth. This is really an issue that I've been raising for many years, and the last time was in 2022, which is about establishing a program. One of the things early on, and I think some of you are probably too young to remember this, but back in the day we grew up and there were, you'd be able to jump the local public school fence. George, you would remember this. And be able to actually play in the playgrounds or, in their fields, or, hit a ball in the cricket nets. They used to have cricket nets, or shoot some hoops in the basketball court. Unfortunately, what's happened now, because we went through a period, or, communities in New South Wales and Australia went through a period where we need to make everything safe. It meant that we locked everything away. And the biggest public assets from a community leisure point of view are now locked away in our public schools. So on weekends where there's no one at those schools, or after hours, those courts, those facilities are actually locked away. One great example is actually Burwood Girls High School, which has, I think, 2 or 3 basketball courts that are never hardly used, that you'll see. And they've got a big two soccer fields, which adjoin Wongal Park, which are barricaded off and fenced off and never used. They were being used by a soccer academy, which I believe used to hire the space. They've now since moved on somewhere else. So now it's really an empty space. So my minute is to write to the Premier and the local state member to advocate. And I've spoken to the Premier about this when I've sat with him at times, but I want to formally write to him now to talk about how important it is to open up these facilities. One of the areas where we have had success is, for example, is with Burwood Public School, which is across the road, where we had a program which started a couple of years back, where I think it was $40,000, where the council received some grant funding, which allowed us to upgrade their basketball courts for them, which they were in need of funding as well. So it worked out well for the school. And in return for that, after hours and on weekends, the gates are actually open to those courts now. However, because many of the public schools now are closed, you don't see much activity there, because community has now built a culture around their spaces, their no-go spaces. So we need to really flip that culture back and create a statewide campaign where we have those public schools opening up these great facilities back to the communities, back to the taxpayers, really, because they are taxpayer-funded facilities. And you could just imagine, and I think we'll do this before we write the letter, we will look at the amount of space we can actually open up. So it'll be really interesting if we run a scenario of all the public spaces, play spaces that our public schools have in our community, that we could then open up. Our private schools are a bit ahead of the game, really. Their facilities, which cost millions of dollars, they're actually opening them up to the public. For example, PLC, MLC School have these great aquatic centres that they've opened up to the public through Learn to Swim programs, as well as hiring those facilities to other schools if they want to come and use it for carnivals or swim lessons. I know PLC, for example, which has a 500 seat theatre, I believe, or 550 seat theatre, actually opens that up to other community organisations or groups to come and use the theatre. PLC's a bit, and they can make it work while having boarding students there. So their biggest issue when I was speaking to the principal was, Dr. Burgess, was we would love to be able to do more, but it's a bit harder for them because they've actually got boarders that live at the school, and there's obviously the issue of safety of the girls. But they're even making it work. So it's really important. I really believe in this, and I think Burwood and our council should lead the charge in speaking up about this issue. I think everyone here at the council would agree the importance of having community sport, not just community sport through sporting groups, but community sport through just active leisure play. Recently, I was at a business Sydney luncheon, which had two ministers there, Minister Camper and Minister Rose Jackson, who spoke about, and it was hosted by Lifeline, as well as and looking at the importance of having sport, community-based sport, so not through sporting groups, just unorganised community-based sporting to help young kids become active again, to support youth mental health. And I think one of the key indicators that we can find out of getting kids active again is it helps in relation to mental health, physical health, and making them active again, especially in when we're coming through a generation now and a period, this last decade, it's just been more prevalent that we're becoming more IT reliant and device reliant. So everything we're doing is just on devices. And you see that in our younger kids. So it'll be great to allow kids to do that. I don't ever remember coming home as a young boy student after doing my homework and you wanted to blow off some steam, I should say. We would walk around the corner to Croydon Public School and jump the short wire fence and play, whether it was trap cricket or soccer or whatever else. Sure, there was the odd, once a year broken window at the school because someone, tried to go for a six and we were playing with a cricket ball, but I'm sure there could be some ways to sort of help dealing with those security issues. But it was harmless fun, right? I mean, if that was the worst you got up to as a kid, I think you were doing pretty well. My minute is that the council write to the Premier of New South Wales, the Minister of Education and Early Learning, the Minister for Planning and Public Spaces, and the member for Stratfield seeking discussions with the New South Wales Government to expand community access to public school infrastructure through a sustainable shared use framework that does not require councils to fund capital upgrades to state-owned school sites, with priority given to high growth communities such as Burwood. Any questions? I'll put them in. All those in favour? Those against? I declare that carried unanimously. Okay. Okay. So I've just been advised by the General Manager that for the order of council business to resume, we need to first deal with NR 1/26, which is the rescission adoption of the Code of Meeting Practice. Any objection from the council? Do I have a mover? The report being moved by Councillor Manor, seconded by Councillor Hull. Speakers for or against, put the motion. All those in favour, those against, declare that carried unanimously. It will now move us into item 42/26, which is the rollout of the food organics and garden organics to single unit dwellings, the Burwood LGA wide. Mover been moved by Councillor Esper, seconded by Councillor Wu Koshit. Speakers for, against, put the motion. All those in favour, those against, declare that carried unanimously. 43/26, integrated planning and reporting documents, moved by Councillor Bata, seconded by Councillor Yang. Speakers for, Councillor Hull.
I just wish to speak briefly against the motion, actually, Mr. Mayor. Wish to just explain why I'm opposing this motion.
Sure.
I cannot support this motion because it includes a 4.1% increase in rates for our residents and businesses, whilst this increase may be within IPART guidelines. I acknowledge the documents before us contain many important initiatives and policies. They have been presented in a single omnibus motion, meaning I can't oppose the rate increase while supporting the other elements separately. Our community does continue to face significant cost of living pressures, high inflation, food prices, fuel prices and costs. Many households and local businesses are making significant financial decisions, and very difficult ones every day. And this council should be mindful, I think, of the additional burden that any rate increase places upon them. During the election for council a couple of years ago, I might say, I made a clear commitment to advocate for a rates freeze. That commitment was made in good faith, and I believe it is important that I honour it. Keeping faith with the residents who elected me does require that I oppose any proposal that includes a rate increase. Accordingly, while I recognise the merits of other aspects of this motion, I think I must vote against it because it contains a 4.1% rate increase that I cannot support. And I would also just quickly add that my opposition to the motion should not be interpreted as opposition to the work of the very professional work of our staff, or as any sort of reflection on my high respect for my fellow councillors either. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other speakers? Can I just ask a question? In relation to the 4.1% increase, Sarah would know, I think we averaged, what was the average weekly increase per household?
We did look at how much businesses cost across council, and we redistributed the 4.1% not evenly across all buckets of council. So if you're in a household outside of town centre, your average rates will only go up just 1%.
And
$18 on average. $18 on average, wasn't it?
Per annum?
I don't have the dollar amount with me, sorry.
I think in our briefings, we actually, we went through that. And one of the things we did do, and Sarah mentioned that there, is we went through a process of where we looked at obviously where there's been an added increased cost, which has been in the town centre. So we were able to redistribute some of the bucket to actually go towards town centre categorised properties. And you might ask, well, why did you do that? We also measured that in light of the increased activity we've got in the town centre now through the festivals. Recently, I spoke about our Lunar New Year festival, which had 50,000 people coming through, spending $4 million. We also had the Greek Street Fair, which had 15 to 20,000 people come through on that day. So I appreciate that, and I understand your objection to the motion. I'm supporting it. Look, in a perfect world, I think we would all love to give our residents a not just a zero increase, to actually not charge them a rate. Unfortunately, in the real world, we can't do that. And I think what we need to do is ensure that we're accountable with the money we're spending for our ratepayers and community. I must say I have the utmost confidence in our staff and the team that are very vigilant with the spend of ratepayers' dollars towards projects, programs, as well as spend through council governance issues, for example, supplies and everything else. I know we run a very lean machine. In saying that, I think we've been a highlight for some of the councils across New South Wales recently. I mean, you only need to look at the news in recent times where you had councils that some of those in the northern suburbs that are struggling, that asked for 50% rate increases. Some asked for 100. Some have asked for 20% on average. So I think for our council, I'd have to commend the council to say that we've done a really good job to keep it in line with the IPART increase of 4.1%. In saying that, the 4.1% increase in our rates won't cover the increase that we're going to cop from a cost point of view on our services. So just think about that for a while. We've had to, and when you sit down, and maybe next year we'll do a bit more budget briefing so you get a better understanding. The increases from our services per annum that are going to be passed on to council are actually going to cost us more than we're actually going to receive from our rate increase. So how have we been able to do that? We've been able to do that through creating efficiencies, looking at ways of cutting costs, creating programs where we've had to rethink those programs. We just went through a process of some of our hiring policy in our community halls where we had businesses were running in those spaces where they were getting no charges. So now we introduced some of those charges, which are still low fee, but they're coming back. Some of the other things we've also looked at is to ensure that if we were going to pass on no increase, it meant that we would have to cut some of those services. We didn't want to cut services. I think our experience in Burwood has allowed us to continue to provide those services in an efficient way. For example, our street sweeping teams that are actually out in the contract in the Burwood Town Centre to ensure that our community continues to have clean streets most times, especially when it's busy. We've been able to use the same teams now and expand their processes to other town centres. So we've been able to increase the service but maintain the cost of that, as well as retraining our outdoor park staff. So staffs that are in our parks are now doing some of the adjoining streets, for example, along Burwood Road where you've got some landscaping, whereas before we used to have contractors come in to maintain that landscaping. Our parks teams are now doing some of the adjoining streets, roundabouts, and so forth. So we've still been able to keep the service, but cut the cost there from using a contractor and actually build it into an existing service. So while I can appreciate it might be easy to say that, I don't support a 4.1% increase. I think from memory, we worked out it was about $18 per annum on average per household, which isn't much considering, and I know it's really tough for communities at the moment, but the level of and the number of services that Burwood is actually providing to our ratepayers, and I hear this all the time from our ratepayers and our residents, is it's the level of services we're providing is way above our adjoining councils. You've got adjoining councils which are in financial difficulty. We've still been able to come up with a balanced budget for the community while continuing that high level of service where we're providing the same services, if not more, and we're not cutting programs. So it's a credit to the team. I think it's a really small part to pay, 4.1%. I think it's really a good news story for us because it's allowed us to continue with the delivery of services. We're still being financially accountable and we're doing it in a financially responsible way by continuing to have a balanced budget whereas other adjoining councils and councils across New South Wales are crying out to government saying that they can't keep up. They're cutting services, increasing rates by 50 to 80, 90%. We've been able to do all that and more with a 4.1% increase. So on that basis, I'll be supporting the program put before us in the motion. Any other speakers? Write a reply. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare that carried. Thanks, councillors. Next item is the 48/25 endorsement for Gateway Amendments Design Excellence Competition, which really talks about a previous motion that we had, which was to look at ensuring that future developments that come into the Burwood Town Centre that are over the 17 levels still allow our planning staff to be able to have some added powers to ensure that we're getting really good design outcomes. Have I got a mover? Moved by Councillor Manor, seconded by Councillor Yang. Speakers for, against, put the motion. All those in favour, those against, declare that carried, unanimous. Next item is 44/26, New South Wales Local Government Remuneration Tribunal. Moved by Councillor Yang, seconded by Councillor Esper. Speakers for, against, put the motion. All those in favour, those against, declare that carried unanimously. 45/26, Policy Housekeeping. Moved by Councillor Batter, seconded by Councillor Wu-Koshit. Speakers for, against, put the motion. All those in favour, those against, declare that carried unanimously. Licence to Play Interim Place Activation Policy, item 46/26. Moved by Councillor Manor, seconded by Councillor Yang. Speakers for. I'm going to speak in favour. You're probably sick of hearing from me, but this is a really good policy and council should be really proud of this. Recently, I had one of the councillors from Sydney City Council reach out. We were at a Business Sydney event. I was called to be on a panel there with talking about the nighttime economy. And we had three other speakers, one of them being from Amex, one was from JC Deco, and also from a consultant that JC Deco used to talk about the nighttime economies in New South Wales. And they wanted to learn about how Burwood is sort of adapting and reacting to the demand for people that want to come out, especially at night. So there's a whole new, another economy, I should say, which is the nighttime economy. And one of the ways that Burwood has been able to do that is because we've become a destination, not just a destination for people to come, but we've actually, where we've become an experience. So we're becoming a cultural experience. And people are actually coming out here to have the Burwood experience, which is really refreshing and good. In saying that, one of the councillors from Sydney City after that talk, who was there, Zan, and also the Mayor of Waverley, my mate Will Namesh, was also there. And they're really keen on learning from some of the programs that Burwood has, and I was proud to say that I sent a copy of this to Councillor Maxwell from Sydney City, because I believe Sydney City doesn't even have this. One of the things, just to, I guess, pick up in the Licence to Play program, is cutting red tape, making it easier for businesses to operate, but it's bringing back the creative spirit for businesses to operate in our town centre and to contribute to the cultural experience. And that's why it's really important. But one of the things recently was in relation to, for example, busking. I think we all heard the news when Sydney City was sort of banished across news outlets because of its busking policy and how difficult it was to busk. I've actually got videos on my phone from a recent trip to Victoria, Melbourne City, where you see many buskers on street corners there entertaining people going through the city. And I'd like to report that, for example, now in Burwood, you just need to fill out an application form and it's pretty much instantly approved. I think we've had 30 applications in the last month or so for buskers to actually come out. We're getting more buskers at night. So that's one of the key initiatives for License to Play. One of the other ones is making it a lot more easier and less red tape for example, for shops to encompass public art into their design, allowing them to have temporary road closures, for example. It's not as expensive. There's not as much red tape for those businesses, as well as the really important thing of footpath activation, precincts with outdoor dining, as well as shopfront improvement programs. And a key part of that is, I believe this year we had $50,000 set aside in our budget that allows shopfronts to actually apply to council for shopfront improvement programs. And I believe we've had in the last 2 years about 20 shops, just under 20 shops that have taken up that program and improved their shopfronts. So really good program, really encouraged by a great job by the team who continue to come up. And this is now becoming pretty much a leader in the state on how we can activate it. I know the department's really interested in it. The Minister, John Graham, has come out and spoken and done videos with me on Burwood Council's License to Play policy and how it's really working well. I had my good mate, Trenton, the Mayor of Ryde, recently, a few months back, come out to a Ford Lane event and went through it with me, and has since spoken to me about ways that we've activated our town centre and how we wanted to apply some of those to Eastwood town centre in the right areas. So it's great to be working with other local mayors and councils to really activate, because we don't here at Burwood see it as competition. We actually see it as increasing the experience. And the more experiences we have in Sydney, you'll find that there'll be more and more visitors coming here because they'll want to have an experience at those different locations. Any other speakers? Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, I declare it carried unanimously. Next item is 47/26, which is the investment report as at the 31st of May, moved by Councillor Batter, seconded by Councillor Yang. Speakers for or against, put the motion. All those in favour, those against, declare that carried unanimously. Notice of motions. First notice of motion is NM1/26, which is the expansion of the Library of Things at Burwood Library and Community Hub, which is moved by Councillor Batter. Councillor Batter, I'll get you to just read your motion first, then I need a seconder before you can speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as we all know, like Burwood is a vibrant, high-density, increasingly diverse community, and many residents living in apartments or smaller dwellings.
Councillor, before you speak, I'll just get you to read the motion.
Item NM1/20.
Yeah, I'll just get you to actually read the recommendation, which is down the bottom, which is 1, investigate the feasibility. It's on page 249. Yeah.
Okay.
Then I'll get a seconder, then you can speak. Because if we don't have a seconder,
So for me to move that, the council investigates the feasibility of progressively expanding the Library of Things program at the Burwood Library and Community Hub to support sustainability, resource sharing, and community well-being, to undertake community engagement with residents, library users, and key stakeholders to identify the types of items, equipment, and resources most needed and desired by the community, and develop a communication and marketing strategy to increase community awareness of the free resources and borrowing opportunities available through the Burwood Library and Community Hub, including future Library of Things initiatives.
do I have a seconder? Been moved by Councillor Manor. Seconded by Councillor Manor. Councillor Batter, you
So I can break.
speak now.
Thank you. So again, going back to Burwood and, how we're all aware of the high density, the vibrant community that we live in, with many residents living in apartments and smaller dwellings. And of course, with that comes very limited storage space. At the same time, the ongoing cost of living that has been raised previously as well, it continues to add on to the pressures and impacts the household across our communities, particularly families, our young people, students and older residents who make up quite a bit of the people who reside in our areas. So across Australia and internationally, Library of Things have emerged as an innovative extension of traditional library services that enables residents to borrow useful household, creative, educational, and recreational items in the same way that they borrow books. These initiatives promote sustainability by encouraging reuse, reducing unnecessary consumption, and supporting a circular economy while also improving affordability, accessibility, and community connections. The Burwood Library and Community Hub already provide an impressive and highly valued range of resources beyond traditional books, collections, including children's toy packs and a variety of educational, creative learning kits, such as robotic kits, energy-saving kits, and home recording kits. These resources are a wonderful community asset and are already utilized by residents. And I was very lucky enough to go around and have a look at the things, and I highly encourage the fellow councillors to also go and have a look at the things that are already available within the council library. So this is basically an opportunity to build on awareness of these existing resources, while also exploring how the library's current offerings could progressively evolve through additional community-informed resources and borrowing opportunities. The potential future additions to the expanded Library of Things would include items like tools and DIY kits, camping equipment, sporting equipment, musical instruments, and additional practical resources suitable for residents of all ages. Such initiatives has the potential to complement Council's broader objectives relating to sustainability, waste reduction, community well-being as well. Given the diversity of the community that we live in, it's important that any future expansion of Library of Things be informed by targeted community engagement to identify the types of items and resources most needed and valued by residents. It's also very important for us to understand what that appetite is and what it is that our community really want. So subject to the outcomes of this engagement, any future expansion could be implemented progressively over time, having regard to the available funding within the existing library operational and capital budget, storage capacity, accessibility within the library and community hub. And that's about it. Okay. Thank you. But I really want to also add, we've talked so much about, sustainability today. We've added on to the cost of living. We understand the community we live in. We're talking about the high rises. It's so important for us to also think about what does that mean for people to change their attitude into what we buy, how we utilize things. We want people to experience so many things without being a cost on our budgets as well. So hopefully this will be a great addition to the community we are so proud to be a part of. So that's about
Thanks, Councillor. Really good initiative. Councillor Manor, did you wish to speak?
Congratulations, Councillor Barter, for the notice of motion. Well done. Thank you.
Any other speakers? The motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare that carried unanimously. I now move to item NM2/26, which is reducing barriers to heritage and conservation. I'll now remove myself from the meeting, as well as Councillor Hull. I hand over to the Deputy Mayor to chair the meeting. I just know, councillors, just a reminder, in your council papers, while Councillor Manor is coming up here, there's a confidential item which was excluded from the agenda, which had the budget on the FOGO. Because that's commercially in confidence, I suggest you either shred it yourself or hand it back to the governance guys, because when we go out to contracts, there's figures in here that we've made estimates on, so we don't want to compromise the council's ability to get the best price for its program, because it could differ from what we're estimating here. So because sometimes you might leave your papers somewhere, it ends up in the wrong hands. It's no good. So if you are taking it with you to have another read, just please reminder it's there. Shred it when you finish with it, or if you're going to recycle your papers like I do, just give it to the governance team. Thanks. You can close the meeting. You close the meeting. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I move this and with the recommendation. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Councillors, it's a notice of motion 2/26, reducing barriers to heritage conservation. I will move that the General Manager undertake a review of the council fees and charges associated with heritage conservation works with a view to reducing financial barriers for residents and provide a report back to council. Recommendation would be that council staff explore options for discounted fees and charges associated with heritage conservation works with a view to reducing financial barriers for residents and provide a report back to council. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barter, seconded. As we know, Burwood has a rich and valued history reflected in its heritage items and conservation areas. The preservation of these properties are often requires significant investment and commitment, particularly for homeowners. Supporting heritage conservation works is therefore an important role for council, recognising the broader benefits that these works deliver in maintaining local character and identity. In this context, it is timely to review the fees and charges applicable to small-scale developments involving heritage conservation works. In addition to development application fees, residents are often required to pay multiple associated fees to council for hoardings, footpath closures, road closures, and work zones, each attracting separate fees under council fees and charges schedule. Collectively, these costs can act as a barrier to undertaking conservation works. Reduced fees or barriers for heritage restoration projects would provide a practical mechanism to address these barriers and demonstrate council's commitment to preserving our local heritage. So, an urban environment that maintains and enhances our sense of identity and place. It's really important that we continue to assist residents that own heritage items, houses. It's really difficult, as I said. The costs and fees associated with upkeep is a big burden on those households. So if council can support and help the process, that's what I'd be recommending. Thank you. So do I have a mover? All for the notice of motion? Any speakers? Sorry, I should have said before. No speakers. Okay. You want to speak? Okay. So the notice of motion was carried unanimously. I'll call for the meeting to close at 6:52 p.m. Thank you, councillors. Thank you.